Hello, this is Josiah Go, and welcome to my seminar on 8 things to evaluate in your business model during coronavirus. And we're all home quarantine, and we have a lot of time to reflect. So, hopefully in 30, 40 minutes time, you should be able to get a lot of ideas in terms of what are gaps in your business model. But first, let me just thank all of you. I've been an author since 1992, and all my 18 books, they were bestsellers. And so thank you very much for supporting me for the last close to 3 decades. I really appreciate it very much. As to how I got involved in business model, I actually launched a seminar on market driving strategy. It's the only seminar, advanced marketing seminar, focusing on the underserved market. Because the marketing strategy that I've seen are basically brand switching strategy, looking at the existing market and not looking at the underserved market. So since then, I've created a 7-step process, not just based on marketing mix, but a totally different 7-step process for companies to understand how to formulate a market driving strategy. It so happened that the 7th step is called a business model. And the year after, in June 2010, a year after market driving strategy was launched, I launched a business model seminar. And since then, I have thousands of participants who became familiar with the business model map of Mansmith. And I hope to share the business model of the 11 building blocks of business model map to you in this particular webinar. My consulting mission is very simple, and I want to help companies across industries do their jobs better, faster, and most importantly is to do it differently. I've always said that being better is the enemy of being different. And a lot of companies, they just try to be better but not different. But including this business model, I'll also try to help you how to be different in the marketplace. So what is a business model? A business model makes a business idea come alive. So if you have a lot of ideas, be prepared. Chiki, who is the CEO of Mansmith, and myself, we co-wrote a book on entrepreneurship. And we've discovered that there are 4 gates of entrepreneurship: preparation gate, the marketing gate, execution gate, and then the self-leadership gate. And then in the preparation gate includes business model. And what we have discovered is seldom do you find people with a business model, with a defined business model. And that's very dangerous because they went into business without actually being prepared. And the business model with 11 building blocks, and I'm going to show you those building blocks in a while, is a document that shows how a company plans to create, to deliver, and capture value to a set of customers and consumers. And therefore, it's really about not just about value creation, but about making sure that you get to execute and you get to be profitable with your value creation. And of course, there are so many reasons why we all need to learn business model. From understanding how to run a business to how to make money, how to formulate, execute, how to evaluate and redirect your strategy, how one building block affects another in terms of what needs to be coordinated, what can affect performance, for example, in terms of what capabilities are needed, in terms of how to model different versions of business model before you launch it, and in terms of how to reconfigure for innovation, and finally in terms of how to disrupt an industry, or understanding that how you can be disrupted. So you can see business model, there's really two major parts. What is called the offering model and the operating model. The offering model is where, marketing people are busy doing their jobs, and the operating model is really about the execution side of the strategy. So if you combine your offering model, and there are 5 building blocks there, and the operating model, there are 6 building blocks there, it will result to your financial outcome or your financial model, where you can actually have profitability. So I want to show you those 11 building blocks. And as you can see, it has this continuum loop. No, it's not an infinite loop. And you can see that it stops somewhere, because there is no such thing as a permanent life of a business model. At a certain point in time, you need to change your business model. You need to keep on reviewing to see whether it's relevant or not, and take a look at the gaps in your business model. For example, during the coronavirus, if you have not been operating, there is something wrong in your business model, because you have not been able to maximize it. And that's the reason why I want to show you the 8 elements. But before I show you the 8 elements, I need to give you an example. So I want to show you an example of a restaurant business model map. So you can see, for example, let's simplify that these restaurants, the target market are middle class families. Their value proposition is that they offer delicious and affordable Filipino style chicken. It's a chicken specialty restaurant. The channel, which is really where the value proposition will reach the target market, is through a restaurant chain. They have different branches. And then the customer bonding strategy, which is needed to convert value proposition to a revenue model, is really about store opening campaign. You have monthly special, monthly menu, and then you have quick service. So sort of understanding what's the awareness, trial, and repeat purchase strategy of the company. And finally, if you look at the revenue model, it's basically from dine-in sales, well, little takeout. No? So you can see the first 5 building blocks in the offering model. Marketing people should be very familiar with this. No? Now let's take a look at the operating model, which is really starting from number 6, value chain. As you can see, these are all number, so that it's very easy to follow. And if you look at the value chain, it's beside the value proposition, because the value chain is the step-by-step activities needed to deliver the value proposition. So in the case of the restaurant, you have all the raw materials needed, maybe the chicken, if you have, if you're serving the rice, for example. And there are also smaller components, pepper and vinegar and soy sauce. Sure, but these are small part, but I tell you, without those soy sauce and vinegar and pepper, the food will taste different. So value chains, you need to understand what's valuable in your value chain. And then of course you have your lessers, and then you have your branding activities done. So it's part of your restaurant value chain. And then the key processes would be new product development, MPD. You have your operations, you have your inventory levels, inventory planning, and then you have your marketing activities. And then in terms of resources, you have your brand, as well as your branches that can give you economies of scale. And then your key complementers would be your suppliers and your commissaries, for example, if you have different commissaries. And the assumption here is this is a non-franchise restaurant. And if you're a franchise restaurant, certainly franchisee should be part of your key complementers. I'm going to skip reconfiguration. And I'm going to show you 4 different examples of that. And I'm going to go to costs. So for example, the cost would be raw materials. You have your rent, you have salaries, you have your marketing as your key cost component. Of course, there are construction costs, but that's really more of a reflected as depreciation in your monthly income statement. So you can see in one page, you can see a visual document that shows you about your strategy, the choices that you have made. No? I tell you, if you come up with a business plan, 50 pages, 100 pages, it's easy to write a lot of nonsense. No? But in a one-page business model map, it's very difficult because you get to see everything immediately, and everybody in the company will understand each other through a simple one-page business model map. So you can see that reconfiguration is the building block that I miss. So I'm gonna explain reconfiguration. Very simple. It's really about start doing and stop doing. And so many times people simply follow and answer the question, what are the key factors for success in an industry? Sure, you have to understand the key factor for success in an industry, but not exactly for you to follow. In fact, if you want to innovate, step 1 is to understand the key factor for success, or what is called the logic of industry. But it's really for the purpose of understanding it and understanding what to break, instead of always following the key factor for success. In the first place, if everybody would follow the key factor for success, they would have been very successful. But not everyone are successful in different industries following what is called the KFS. No, so be careful about that. And after you have identified the key factor and you know that these are the rules, then start and stop. Do identify, create something new, and then remove something that is existing. No? And then you can have innovative effort. I'm just going to show you different examples of that. Chooks to Go actually created 1,700 plus stores by now. By now, it's probably pushing 2,000 stores. No? And Bounty Fresh, decided to forward integrate, understanding that they have a very big advantage supplying to themselves. No? Cost-wise, they're a lot cheaper. They can choose the particular size. And they also use Chooks to Go stores nowadays to also sell dressed chicken, the Chokies, smaller size dressed chicken. So the consumers actually, they have a choice of buying cooked as well as dressed chicken. And what did they stop doing? Guess what? To sauce-loving Filipinos, they actually remove sauce. And they have made the rotisserie chicken delicious so that there is really no need for sauce. No? After all, I mean, you put a lot of Filipinos put the sauce not in the chicken, but they put it in the rice. So it's not really sauce all the time for the chicken, but it's really more for the rice. No? And so by not giving the sauce, they probably save 5 pesos per customer. I mean, you have the ingredient, you have the labor, you have the plastic, and so forth and so on. 5 pesos is nothing, but with the volume that they have, they probably save, maybe about 200 million pesos a year by not giving sauce, by really making a choice that says, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're not going to do. No? So now they are the market leader. They have more stores than all the other branded chicken kiosks combined. No? Really fantastic success story. Mang Inasal, what did they start? They started barbecue chicken in QSR. They did not invent barbecue chicken. It was already there. They did not invent fast food or QSR. But they were the first to put barbecue chicken in QSR. What did they remove? So, be reminded that during the first 2 years, when Mang Inasal was still in Iloilo, they were in the parking lot building of Robinson in Iloilo. They were given concession, 50% of rent because, the location was not very attractive to tenant. So they had an advantage in terms of cost. But the other advantage is that they actually didn't have air conditioning. They actually use, fan, no? Electric fan. So they didn't have any air cons. So can you imagine the start doing and stop doing? So just look at the first two examples. Sauce and air conditioning would be standard key factor for success, right? If you want to sell chicken, but not so. So that has proven the point that you have to start challenging individual key factor for success and consider everything as assumptions. No? And if you want to be innovative, you should have that kind of a mindset. No? Starbucks, can you imagine? They started the second wave coffee. And what did they stop? Cafe, restaurants, they all have kitchen. But Starbucks don't have kitchen. They only have ovens. They heat everything. And because they don't have kitchen, they don't need kitchen equipment. They don't need chef. They don't need so many things. But can you imagine restaurants? It's such an expensive prime location, and they allocate about 30-40% of the space for kitchen. So think about it. Again, it's a traditional logic of industry that restaurant needs kitchen, but Starbucks, they're able to sell products at a higher price, and they're able to have lower costs. No? Isn't that a fantastic way to be profitable? Tokyo Tempura, a success story, but they were not successful in the first 2 years, no? Until they had to pivot, and then they said, well, we are the affordable shrimp tempura. So they came up with different sizes, and encouraging people to buy the bigger size. And they've decided we are not restaurants, so we'll just be available in the food outlets area of malls. No? But what about you? What are the key factors for success in your industry? And what can be your start doing and stop doing? So if you have started something in the past, congratulations. But what about the last few years? What have you started? So I think it's a very important thing for you to start thinking about start doing, stop doing. Start is industries first. You're the pioneer. Nobody has ever done it. And if you're doing it first time in your company, but your competitors are doing it, that's not innovation. That's catching up, no? And you have to distinguish. There's a big difference there. No? So I'm now in the main theme of the 8 elements that you need to evaluate in your business model. So I'm going to start with the offering model. Really, two things in the offering model. One is to think about essential versus non-essential product. In coronavirus, those essential products, they continue to operate. No, non-essential, well, they have to lie low for a while. So should you review your value proposition, what you're offering? But of course, there's always something essential in something not as essential. No, and you have to find ways to think about what's essential. No? Ice cream may not be essential, but if you are home quarantined for several weeks, after a while, to preserve your sanity, you might want to have your comfort food. No? And you might start looking for ice cream. So that may become essential. I'm in the water purifier business, among other things. No? And I'm chairman of Waters Philippines. And we sell Waters Biomineral Pottery in one alkaline purified mineral water equipment. And we're a market leader in the industry. And we're quite lucky because the consumers many of the consumers understand what is called crisis preparedness. They saw that alcohols are under allocation. You can only buy 2 bottles per person. Other products you can only buy two, and some figured that water refill station would be next. No? And so a lot of people decided that they want to be prepared to have a home water purifier so that they can have clean and delicious water anytime. No, so that becomes essential, especially if you communicate why it should be essential. So your messaging has to be relevant to the times. No. The other thing, of course, is the channel of distribution. Many companies they had to resort to online digital channel, but not everything is digital. I've observed that two things are very important during the coronavirus time. One is what is called your social messaging app, because a lot of homeowners associate, a lot of neighborhood created different groups. No? And I've discovered Quezon City has a Quezon City Residential Community Group in Viber, Green Hills, Pasig, and so forth and so on. So if you're residing in that area, and if you're not in that residential community, too bad, no? Because you can see a lot of people selling stuff to their neighbors or within that particular community. The next best thing is that ask yourself, do you have community dealers who can represent you in the most unlikely event that that's the only resort, the only option that you have. No? The third channel, the third very important observation is that this is a time when referrals becomes very important, because if you're happy customers, they can refer customers to you. So even if you're not available, you can still have sales if customers refer you. No? And so that's the reason why continuously marketing is about, part of it is about customer satisfaction. But it's, of course, not about customer satisfaction. It's a product or a service that satisfies a customer. But of course, marketing is a lot more than that. So that's the first two elements that you have to take into consideration. So now we look at the operating model, and we look at 6 elements that you have to evaluate. No? I think the very important thing is about value chain. You notice that value chain is beside value proposition, so that you can easily see what are the activities that you need to link and sequence in order to deliver your value proposition. And you notice that many products are out of stocks. They don't have availability. So one of the things that you have to understand is you can have a very good value proposition, but you can have a very bad value chain design. And part of the understanding about business model is value chain design. And a business model map without value chain is an incomplete business model map or a business model canvas. I think it's a very important thing, especially in the coronavirus period, to talk about two things. Now, one is about supply assurance. So if you're out of stock, you're market leader, and the market challenger, they have the stocks, they have inventories, they have availability. So what happened next? When people may no longer become brand conscious, but they just want to have that particular product. Alcohol, for example, you're the market leader, but people don't care. So long as they get the 70% alcohol, they'll get it, because instead of having no alcohol. So this is a time when the purchase decision tree would be violated in a crisis period, where brand, if you're not available, then people start looking at product instead of brand. So think about supply assurance. And if you have a time machine, would you have the same value chain? Would you have the same supplier? And many companies would rely on one dominant supplier. Of course, B2B, normally you have 3 different suppliers, but you have one dominant supplier. And if you have one dominant supplier and in one country, and it so happened to be in Wuhan, in China. So what does it mean to you? You know, suddenly you have no supply, and you have bet the whole company into a particular supplier. You may be proven to be wrong. So it's time to really evaluate your value chain in terms of supply assurance. And many times there's a trade-off between your supply chain and your cost that says, well, you know, the reason why we do business with these suppliers because they're good quality and they give us the lowest cost. But the corona crisis would tell us that beyond the lowest cost, you can be lowest cost, but if you don't have supply, it's actually nothing, you know. So you now have to make a trade-off that says, I also want assurance of supply. So maybe I may not have lowest costs, but at the very least, I now have different options. No? And so another question about supply that you have to take into consideration is, did you have very good, do you have very good relationship with different suppliers, even suppliers that you have fired in the past? Because if you do not maintain that relationship, you don't know when you need them again. No? So again, part of it is that in your value chain, what are the policy changes? What do you need to review in terms of understanding flow of products, flow of raw material, flow of relationship, flow of information, flow of funding, and so forth and so on. No? So, you know, I think it's a very important thing also for you to think about the potential of having relationship with SMEs or small medium scale enterprise and help them grow, and part of a strategic supplier development effort. And lastly, of course, a part of your value chain is your inventory level. You can have supply, but you might not have adequate inventory. I told you about the advantage suddenly of a market challengers. Different challengers have different products, and suddenly you're not available. You're easily sold out, and you want to be efficient. So in out very quickly. You might be manufacturing only for 2 days, but if you don't have the raw materials coming in, too bad for you. No, so you know your philosophy of being efficient but you know, and managing your balance sheet may no longer, you know, may no longer be adequate at this point. You probably need to review that as well. Or if you have over inventory, so I'm sure by now you have to start saying, so what's your contingency plan if you have over inventory? Or what's your exit strategy? So if you're not able to, you know, to sell all of this, so what's your plan B going to be like? No? And so I think that's a important thing. I also want to share about, you know, the importance of process. You know, you have an agile process. Like I was just sharing about, I want to do a video about 8 elements to evaluate in your business model. We were just discussing to this. I'm now shooting now, no? Shooting today, and so we have a very agile organization, very flexible people. But what's happening in coronavirus is there's social distancing. So guess what's going to happen in terms of looking at your company's processes? So will you create business processes where you reduce human contacts or human interaction? Is that a very important thing? Are you going to continue with your thermal scanning in your factory? So these are questions that you have to anticipate ahead of time. What about the partner of processes, which is called your resources, your IT? Do you have adequate investment in your IT? More and more, it's getting to be indispensable. And then your people, even essential products, in manufacturing of essential products, they cannot even sell 100%, and the reason is they don't have enough manufacturing people Some live they live very far. Some are not able to travel. The others are afraid. So, what do you think? Are you going to change your human resource policy with regards to people, which is a key resource to execute your strategy? Will you be hiring more people nearby? Will you be coming out with a motorcycle or a bicycle plan for all your employees so that you make sure that they have mobility at the very least? So what's gonna be the policy change for that? And you need to review not just your value chain but your processes and your resources. Another area that you have to review would be your complementers. And your complementers, you have to start thinking about your strategic alliance. Do you have the right key suppliers? And if your key suppliers are not relevant to you, they cannot help you deliver your value proposition, then you have to start thinking again whether they are really key complementers or not. No? And maybe for the entrepreneurs, you have to start thinking if you need to start looking for business partners, new business partners, so that you can carry out your value proposition in an uninterrupted way. And you will not run out of money because, as you know, cash is a very important thing in business. No? And of course, reconfiguration. Think about, the ability to disrupt or being disrupted. Alibaba, JD.com in China became very prominent, during the SARS, period and after the SARS period, because people were suddenly forced to use online, and suddenly they have massive trial of online purchase, and so there's always opportunities in crisis. And lastly, of course, you look at your costs. You have to evaluate your costs, and you want to control your cost element. And as I said, you make trade-off decision between supply and cost, no? Between the risk of supply and procurement risk, no? And hopefully you can balance the two, and also ensuring cash flow. So how are you going to do that? If you are a big companies and you have a lot of excess cash, will you be helping some of your suppliers survive, be a force for good? If you are a smaller company and you need the cash, would the government be able to give credit, guarantee some of the credit? Would you be able to get, extended credit from your suppliers who used to charge you cash? Would you be able to get advance payment from your customers, the big ones who can afford to pay in advance? So there are 6 elements that you need to evaluate in your operating model, and this is aside from the 2 elements that you need to evaluate in your offering model. So what I'd like to emphasize now is that, I was telling you about value chain a while ago, that it's indispensable in a business model map. You cannot have a business model architecture without value chain. And during the coronavirus time, definition of coming up with your value chain is so important. And people must understand, even the government now imposing permit so that you can deliver essential food items, and the barangays who stop the deliveries, and some of them have been reported to start asking, what are you delivering? If they don't understand about value chain, then that's too bad. Feeds is part of chicken and poultry. You cannot have feed. You cannot have chicken and pork and all of this unless you have feeds, no? And unless you have the packaging, unless you have the plastic, they are all part of the value chain. And it's a very important, very important to identify what's the value chain of an industry. And the government must also be very conscious about identifying, not just understanding an industry, but come up with the value chain of an industry, so that they have a ready understanding of what an industry is all about. No? The second thing is about reconfiguration. Business model map without reconfiguration, without innovation, without planning for innovation in this day and age, it's simply, I just cannot imagine if you will just operate the traditional way. No, so I'm gonna remove value chain and reconfiguration on your screen. You can see I've removed value chain and reconfiguration. So what's left? What do you think? Is this still a complete business model map? And you realize that it's now an incomplete business model map. Again, emphasize the importance of these two components that you cannot find the equivalent of business model map. No? In the immediate future, I want to introduce you to a business model video course. As you know, I have been running business model seminar since the year 2010. I have spent more than 10,000 hours, a lot more than that in terms of analyzing, looking at business model of different companies. And I think it's very important to look at business model from a different standpoint, from the standpoint of selection, risk mitigation, reconfiguration, and innovation. I've shared some of the ideas that I have. So I want to share about selection criteria. Like, for example, in value chain, my selection criteria for value chain would be one would be it has to be valuable. Of course, you can have so many things. You don't include everything. You only include the activities that are valuable, something of value, and it's advantage creating. If you add an activity, then it has to create an advantage for you. So let's say if you add a channel of distribution, it can add an advantage for you. And the people defined in the value chain better have a shared future with you, so that you can have a very good value chain design. And hopefully they are a key complementer and not going to be your competitor in the future. And finally, they are also accountable and making sure that you will not have supply risk and you will have supply assurance rather. We're expected to have about 52 videos in 4K quality. 4K is Netflix quality, very high quality. We're 80-90% finished by now. And we just need to respect home quarantine, social distancing. So we're not shooting. We have about 10 crew members using 3 cameras, and we just need to make sure that we respect the government mandate for us to do social distancing and home quarantine. But I'm very glad to report to you that many companies agreed to share their business model map with us. FILA, Union Bank, Signal, Concepcion Industry, WAV, Mega, Bayad Center, Acrotrans, Converge, PPI, Philab, Chokes to Go, 11 major companies will be presenting to you in the business model course, sharing with you their business model maps. I'm extremely thrilled that they're doing it so publicly, and understanding that we are actually in an interconnected society, and we can learn from each other. So in summary, I said the business model is about offering model and operating model. That value chain is really about to ensure supply and to remove supply risks. Reconfiguration is about disruption, about innovation. A business model is also about risk mitigation, and therefore it's about continuity. So you have to make sure that your business model will give you continuity, and therefore you have to think about selection criteria. And finally, I encourage you to think about evaluating your business partners, whether they be your actual financial partners or your key suppliers, I think it's time for you to start taking a second look at them. No, so let's stay in touch. josiahgo.com. My blog has over 500 articles and interview with CEOs and CMOs. I don't charge anything, and you have unlimited access. It's up to you. You have all the time during the coronavirus to catch up with your reading. I have a Facebook page, Josiah Go Author. I'm in Twitter. I have close to 6,000 marketing tips in Twitter. Just go to Josiah Go. I have LinkedIn, I have Instagram, and my email address is josiah@mansmith.net. So let's keep in touch. If you're interested in the business model course, tell us about it so we can reserve your name. You'll be the first to know soon as we would offer it. The first two classes, unfortunately, are already booked. We have over 100 people reserve our first two video courses. But we will announce when it would be available. So do tell us if you're interested. So stay safe, stay home, and stay healthy.